The wind in town that morning was the kind that got into your teeth. Not sharp, not cold exactly, just mean. It scraped along the wooden boards of the trading post, rattled window panes loose, and whispered its dirty secrets between boots and buckles. Folks didn't look one another in the eye today. Too much noise in the air. Too much shame waiting to be bought. At the center of the square, where the gallows had once stood before the railroad came, they'd built a makeshift platform from split planks and old feed crates. That's where the man stood. Drunk already. Laughing through bad teeth. Waving a paper sign nailed to a stick, $1 for the set. The crowd had gathered slow, like flies to something rotting. He pulled the woman forward by her wrist. She wasn't crying. That struck folks first. Most women sold like this either screamed or stared off somewhere far. But this one, heavy with child, bones tight under her dress, one hand clutching the small boy who barely reached her waist, she didn't scream. She looked through them. Like she'd seen the worst already, and none of them would make her blink. The boy was maybe 5. Dirty cheeks. Big eyes. No shoes. They stood there, silent, while the man with the sign shouted bargains and lies. "Sturdy woman," he called. "Can cook, clean, and give you another brat soon enough. Hell, you might get twins. I've had my fill." He laughed like he was proud. Someone spat on the ground. An old man in a wool coat asked, too quiet, "Ain't this against the law?" A voice behind him muttered, "Ain't no law round here worth a damn. Not for folks like her." The man on the platform barked, "I got debts. She ain't my wife no more, just a burden. $1 gets you both." The boy flinched when he said burden. Most men there shifted their eyes elsewhere. Not one of them pulled out a coin. Not yet. But someone had moved. He was tall but thin, like someone who'd once had strength but hadn't needed it in a while. His clothes were patched neat. Boots cleaned, though worn. The kind of man you didn't look at twice, because he didn't invite it. Didn't give you a reason. He stood at the edge of the square, hat low, hands at his sides. Watching. Not the husband. Not the crowd. Just the woman. Her eyes met his for the briefest second. He didn't flinch. The drunk kept pushing her forward. "You'll find no better deal. She don't talk back. Don't ask nothin'. Hell, she's yours to name." That's when the quiet man finally stepped forward. One boot on the step of the platform. Then the next. He didn't speak loud. Didn't shout. Just said, "I'll take her." The man blinked. "What?" "The woman. And the boy. I'll take 'em both. $2 then." "Don't have two." A silence fell like the hush after a sermon. Cold. Absolute. The drunk looked him over. "Then get off my crate." The quiet man reached into his coat. Pulled out something wrapped in cloth, unfolded it slow. Inside, 3 silver coins and a gold wedding band. "This is what I have." The husband snatched the ring first. "Deal," he said too quickly. The woman said nothing, just stared at the man with the worn coat, like trying to see his soul through the shape of his collarbones. He didn't reach for her. Didn't touch the boy. Just turned and started walking. Looked back once. They followed. No one clapped. No one cheered. The wind moved in behind them, lifting dust. The wagon was plain. Old. 2 blankets in the back. A chipped canteen tied to the side. He helped the boy climb up. Then nodded for her. As she climbed in, she paused, one hand on the edge. "Why'd you do it?" He didn't look at her. Just clicked the reins. "Didn't feel right, leavin' you there. That all." He didn't answer. The road out of town was long and mostly uphill. Trees gave way to open land, crusted with snow on the edges. No one spoke. The boy watched the clouds. The woman cradled her belly like a secret. They stopped once to let the horses rest. She leaned against the sideboard, catching her breath. "You got a name?" she asked. He nodded but didn't give it. After a pause, he said, "You can stay the night. Just the night. Then we'll see. She nodded. That's fair. At dusk, they reached the cabin. It wasn't much. A roof. A door. Smoke curling from the chimney like it had forgotten how to be fire. He carried the boy inside. Set him near the stove, where red coals whispered. She hesitated on the porch. You live here alone? He nodded. No wife. A pause. Once. She stepped inside. Her boots left wet marks on the wooden floor. He pointed to the cot. You take the bed. He'll stay warm by the stove. What about you? I'll sleep by the door. She looked at him a long moment. You don't have to do this. I know. He didn't take off his coat. Just sat down, back to the wall, one knee drawn up, hat tilted low. She tucked her son in. Sat beside him. The boy curled into her chest, thumb in his mouth. The fire cracked like it remembered something. Later that night, she woke to pain. Not labor. Not yet. Just the ache of being somewhere safe for the first time in too long. She walked to the door. Found him sitting just as he had been. Awake. Can't sleep. He shrugged. You some kind of preacher? No. Then why the hell'd you do it? He thought for a long time before answering. Lost my wife. Year ago. Fever. He shifted. Used to think I'd earned that kind of pain. That maybe I deserved to sit with it. But watching you on that crate today. He stopped. She waited. He didn't finish. Instead, he said, There's coffee. If you want it. She shook her head. You ever want anything from me? It won't be like that man in town. I'd rather freeze. He didn't flinch. I ain't that man. You say that now. He looked at her then. Really looked. You don't gotta trust me. Not yet. Just stay the night. That's all. She nodded. All right. Back in bed, she curled around her son. The fire had died down to soft breath. In the darkness, her voice rose once more. My name's not important. Not yet. But I remember yours. He didn't turn. She smiled into the pillow. I saw it on the wedding band. Silence. He chuckled once. Quiet, like dust lifting. Guess I'll have to change the engraving then. She didn't answer. But her eyes stayed open a long while, watching the glow of safety trace itself across the ceiling like moonlight. And far off, beyond the wind, a wolf howled once, and was not answered. The first snow came 2 mornings later, so soft it seemed the sky was apologizing for the world. Flakes drifted through the air like quiet prayers, settling against the windows, the roof, the path leading from the barn to the cabin door. Inside, the woman kept her boy close. He'd found a small wooden horse on the windowsill, one ear chipped, one leg glued back poorly. He cradled it like treasure. The man said nothing when he saw the boy holding it. Just nodded and placed a tin plate of cornbread on the table. Made it this morning, he said. Ain't much, but it's warm. The woman took it, her fingers brushing his for half a second. She didn't look up. He didn't linger. Just stepped back and turned to the stove, lifting the kettle. She watched his shoulders. They moved slow, as if each motion had been learned during grief and never unlearned. She wanted to ask him where the flour came from, who had mended the blanket her boy now slept under, why the bed was too wide for one man and too quiet for two. But she said nothing. Her pride hadn't vanished just because her name had. That night, her boy cried in his sleep. She reached over and pressed a hand to his chest. The man came to the doorway, silent as a shadow. He okay. Just dreams. The man nodded once. She waited, but he didn't leave. So she said it. You ever have children? He rubbed his jaw, eyes somewhere far. One. Girl. Didn't make it past a year. I'm sorry. He didn't say thank you. Just stood there until she added, Was that before or after your wife? Same time. She looked down at her boy. I lost one too. Before this little one. Slipped away before I could name her. Her father didn't even come inside the room. I came back from town that day, the man said, and found the crib empty and the window open. The wind creaked the cabin's frame like it knew their pain and had no words for it. I told myself, he continued, voice barely more than breath, that I'd never let someone in again. Not really. Not past the porch. Her voice was quieter than his. And yet here we are. He left after that. Went outside. She saw the outline of him through the frost, stacking wood like the act might hold back all he didn't say. The next morning, she tried to help, sweeping the floor, boiling water, folding a few shirts that didn't belong to her. He didn't stop her. By midday, she found herself humming. She hadn't meant to. Hadn't heard the tune in years. A lullaby her mother sang when the stars were kind. The man was chopping wood outside, axe swinging in rhythm, but he paused when he heard her. He didn't move again until she stopped. That night, the boy asked for a story. The man surprised them both by telling one. It was about a fox and a crow, and it didn't make much sense, but the boy laughed anyway. When the child fell asleep, the man stood and said, "Good night." She called after him, "Why'd the crow give up the cheese?" He stopped, thought about it. Maybe he was tired of chewing alone. The days folded in on themselves, quiet and slow. She began knitting again. Not well, but with purpose. He built a new shelf near the stove. Said the old one was crooked. She carved a spoon from a scrap of pine. Gave it to the boy. He named it after the horse. One day, her pain came early, low and sharp. She hid it behind a smile and sat on the porch. The man noticed. Of course he did. Baby coming early? Not yet. Just my body remembering it still belongs to me. He sat beside her. Not too close. Just enough. You scared? Of what? The birth. Starting over. She smiled, bitter and kind. I'm scared I'll get soft here. Scared I'll forget how to protect myself. He looked at her then, eyes steady. You don't have to be hard to survive. And what if kindness gets me sold again? He didn't answer. Not at first. Then he said, I ain't got much. But what I do have, no one's taking from you. The air between them shifted. Not warmer. Not yet. But less sharp. That night, a storm came down from the hills. Thunder rolled like a warning, and the boy clung to her side. She couldn't sleep. Neither could he. They sat across the room from each other. Fire between them. You ever think this cabin holds its breath? She asked. He tilted his head. Like it's waiting for something. Or someone. It was waiting for sound again, he said. Been too quiet too long. I don't want to be someone's noise. He shook his head. You're not. You're the reason it breathes at all. She said nothing, but her eyes burned. At dawn, she stepped outside, breath turning to mist. He was already there, sharpening a blade. She said, I don't need saving. He looked up. Didn't think you did. Then why haven't you asked me to leave? Because you're not ready. And neither am I. The baby kicked hard that night. She gasped and nearly doubled over. He was there instantly, hands out but not touching. Do you need help? Just give me space. He backed away. She leaned against the table, breathing through it. The boy cried, waking up. She calmed him with one hand while gripping the edge of the wood with the other. When it passed, she straightened and looked at him. You're not used to being near women, are you? No. That's not a flaw. He smiled. Didn't say it was. Later, he brought her warm tea and set it near her hand without a word. She took it. In the silence, they both heard the sound of life forming between them. Not romance. Not yet. But something soft. Something not for sale. That night, the boy crawled between them on the floor and asked if they were a family now. She said no. The man didn't answer. But he reached over, pulled the boy's blanket higher, and tucked it under his chin. The candle burned down slow. She didn't sleep for hours. And when she finally did, she dreamed not of running, but of staying, of planting something, of waking to safety that didn't ask for anything in return. The cabin didn't hold its breath that night. It exhaled. The thaw came slow that year. First, the icicles lost their daggers. Then, puddles formed along the path where the boy left his boot prints. The sky traded its gray for a gentler blue, and somewhere beyond the ridge, the birds began to return, one at a time, like scouts unsure of their welcome. Inside the cabin, the woman sat at the window sewing a rip in her only shawl. Her belly had dropped lower now. The child within her turned like it, too, knew the time was coming near. He stood outside splitting kindling. There was a rhythm to his movements, a quiet kind of prayer in each strike. Not rushed, not angry, just steady. She watched him for a long time before saying a word. You never asked where I came from. He didn't stop working. Just said, figured you'd tell me when you were ready. I'm not sure I ever will be ready, she said. But maybe I need to try. He rested the axe, wiped his palms on his trousers, and walked to the porch without a word. She let her fingers still. I was 17 when I married him. My father called it a good match. Said we were both strong stock. But I knew even then what kind of man he was. He sat on the top step. Didn't look at her. That helped. I thought I could fix him, she whispered. Thought if I bore his children and fed his anger with silence, he'd soften. But anger doesn't soften. It hardens. Spreads. The wind moved through the dry branches. Neither spoke for a while. He lost our second child before it was even born. Came home drunk and slammed a door near my stomach. I bled for 3 days. He didn't look at me once. Just said it was my fault. That I was weak. The man on the porch didn't blink. Just took a slow breath. You are the strongest person I've ever met. She laughed. Shaky, bitter. I was terrified when he put that sign around my neck. Not because I feared being bought, but because I feared no one would. He turned then. Looked at her like it hurt to do so. You were never something to be bought. She shook her head. I didn't believe that. Not until this place. Not until you. Inside, her boy was humming. The sound of it nearly undid her. I don't understand you, she said. You took us in. No questions. No demands. You don't even ask me to cook. He looked away. Didn't want to ask more from someone already carrying too much. You could have had any number of women, someone softer, someone younger. He cut her off. I didn't want softer. I wanted truth. And you're the most honest thing I've seen in years. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back. He stood and walked down the steps. There's something growing in the barn, he said without turning. You might want to see. She followed him out. The snow had melted in patches. A small cluster of wild crocus had pushed through the mud, pale and stubborn. She stared at the flowers. How'd they grow here? They always come. Even when they shouldn't. Even after fire. He crouched beside them and touched the petals with calloused fingers. She stood above him, watching. Inside the cabin, the boy called for her. She went back in, brushed his hair from his eyes, and whispered a story into his shoulder. The next day, word came. A neighbor arrived, red-faced and nervous, holding a letter from the sheriff's office in town. The boy's father had made a complaint. She's an unwed mother, the neighbor muttered, not meeting either of their eyes. The town thinks the child may be at risk. There's talk of taking him. The woman froze. What do you mean take him? They got lawmen now, after the railroad came. They don't care what the husband did. They care about order. Her hands trembled. The boy looked up at her, confused. The widower spoke calm but firm. They'll take no one from this house. Not while I breathe. The neighbor left soon after, ashamed. That night, She packed her things. Quietly. Carefully. She wasn't going to let her boy be torn from safety. But when she stepped outside, bag in hand, he was already there. "You leavin'?" She nodded. "I have to. If they come and I'm gone, maybe they won't touch him. Maybe you can say you're his guardian." The man stepped forward. "He calls me Pa sometimes." "I know. I never asked him to." She looked down. "That's why it matters. Where will you go?" She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You're not alone anymore." She shook her head. "The law doesn't care about love. It doesn't care about mercy. I'm not risking him." The man pulled something from his pocket. It was small. A braid of silver and worn wood, shaped into a ring. "I was waiting," he said. "But maybe now's the time." Her heart stopped. "I know it ain't the way most men propose," he said, voice low. "But I'm not most men. And you're not just someone I care for. You're the storm and the sky after. You're the reason I remember how to pray." She stared at the ring. "You'd marry me just to save us?" "I'd marry you because I already belong to you." She couldn't breathe. Then, behind her, the boy's voice. "Ma." She turned. He was holding his little wooden horse, watching with wide eyes. The man knelt. "What do you think, son? Can I be your pa for real?" The boy didn't answer, just ran into his arms. And just like that, the woman let the bag fall from her fingers. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The next day, they rode into town. The clerk signed the certificate with a bored hand. No one questioned it. Later, in the churchyard, the man placed his mother's shawl over her shoulders. It wasn't white, but it was clean. It wasn't new, but it was warm. No crowd. No bells. But when they stepped back onto the porch that night, the boy clapped and called it the best day of his life. She wept into her hands. He didn't ask why. That night, as they lay beside each other, not touching, not needing to, she whispered, "You healed something I didn't know could be healed." He replied, "You did the same for me." Outside, the crocus bloomed in moonlight. And inside, 3 hearts beat in quiet rhythm. One whole. One rebuilding. One just beginning. The girl came into the world just after midnight. The storm had held its breath all day, low clouds heavy with silence, and when the first pain tore through her body, thunder cracked like the sky couldn't bear to wait any more. The man lit every lantern in the cabin, his hands moving fast but calm, like he'd done this before, though he hadn't. Not like this. Not for someone who mattered. She tried not to scream. Bit the edge of a quilt, sweat running down her temples. The boy stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide and frightened. The man knelt down, gently touched the boy's shoulder, and said in that voice made of wood smoke and river stone, "Go sit near the fire. She's going to be all right." The boy obeyed, but not before slipping the little wooden horse under his mother's pillow. She labored for hours, muscles tearing, breath ragged, the cabin thick with the smell of iron and fear and fire. He stayed close. Not touching. Just near. Every time she looked to her right, he was there. She whispered once through gritted teeth, "You should leave the room." He said, "You're not alone in this," and didn't move an inch. When the baby cried, it was like hearing sunlight for the first time. The sound wasn't loud. It was soft and unsure, like the world hadn't yet proven itself worthy of her. He held the girl first, just for a moment, wrapped in linen and trembling. He didn't smile, didn't cry, just stared. Then he handed her over. The woman looked down at her daughter, eyes full of a love that hurt. "She's small," she said, "but not broken." He replied, "Just like her mother." The baby latched. The boy came closer and touched his sister's foot like it was made of gold. No one spoke for a long while. When she finally slept, the man stayed by the hearth, watching the flames shrink low, letting the weight of what had happened sink deep into his ribs. Outside, snow fell in thick, wet clumps. Inside, a family had been born. 3 days passed. The girl, named after her grandmother, was already strong-lunged. The boy doted over her, proud to share the name brother. The woman moved slower now, each step a reminder of how much her body had given. He carved a stool for her, low and wide, so she could rest while tending the baby. She didn't thank him with words. Just sat down and rocked the child, humming that old lullaby again. The cabin felt different, as if its beams stood taller, as if the windows had begun to let light in willingly, not with suspicion. Then came the knock. Not a loud one. Not the kind made by friends, either. He opened the door to find two men in wool coats, boots still crusted with travel. One held a paper, the other a look of apology. The man read it, slow, careful. The paper said the child's father, her former husband, had filed a formal claim. Said he'd been robbed. Said the woman had no legal standing to keep the boy, or the newborn. The man folded the paper neatly, set it on the windowsill. Then he said something he'd never said in years. "Get off my land." One of the men, young, likely new to law, stepped forward. "Sir, we have to investigate." The boy walked in then, saw the uniforms, stopped short. The baby cried in the back room. The woman stood behind them all, pale but upright. The man looked at them both, then turned back to the strangers. "You come back here again with papers signed by a man who sold his wife like cattle, and I'll bury that parchment in a place the sun won't find. This ain't a house of sin. It's a home, and you will not tear it apart." The men left, not because they feared him, but because the truth in his voice was heavier than their words. That night, she didn't speak. She just sat by the fire, watching him. Her fingers curled around the baby's blanket. Her shoulders slumped, not with defeat, but release. He came over, knelt before her. "Tired?" She nodded. "I'll watch her tonight," he said. "You sleep." She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "You love her already, don't you?" Since before she breathed. "And me?" He hesitated. "You're not something I just love," he said. "You're the part one thought I'd buried with my wife. The part one thought the world beat out of me. But it's still here. You brought it back." She cried then. Not loud. Just enough. The days passed. The boy started school again. He brought home papers filled with crooked letters and proud smudges. The baby grew louder. The garden thawed. They planted potatoes in silence, side by side. She wore his old hat. He wore her son's laughter like a coat. One Sunday, a group rode past the cabin, neighbors who once gossiped, once whispered. They saw the baby, the boy, the woman with her chin held high, the man who stood with her like they'd always belonged. No one said a word. But the whispers stopped after that. The man carved a cradle, stained it with oil and care. She embroidered the girl's name into a quilt. The boy painted the shutters red. And the house, for the first time in years, looked like someone lived there on purpose. One evening, while chopping wood, the man paused. Listened. The girl was laughing, a bubbling pure sound that seemed too big for her tiny chest. The woman was rocking her gently, face turned toward the fading sun. He walked back inside, took off his coat, sat at the edge of the bed. She looked at him. "What is it?" He smiled. "You changed everything I believed about the world. I didn't mean to. That's how I know it was real." She leaned toward him. "I never thought I'd be safe again. You are. I never thought I'd be wanted. You are." They didn't kiss. Not then. But their hands found each other, and didn't let go. In the weeks that followed, the cabin became a place others noticed. Not because of gossip, but because it radiated something folks didn't have a word for. Hope, maybe. Or the way survival looks when it becomes peace. One of the school teachers said to her quietly, "Your boy told us he has 2 parents now. He said his pa smells like pine and smiles when nobody's looking." The woman laughed. "He says too much." "Not enough," the teacher replied. The baby crawled, stood, fell, laughed again. One morning, as spring finally broke across the ridge, The man walked out onto the porch and found her standing barefoot on the step, baby on her hip, eyes on the horizon. "There's something I've been thinking about," she said. "What's that?" "I want to plant an apple tree. Right in front. Something that'll grow tall. Something the kids'll remember when we're gone." He nodded. "Then we'll dig together. And when it blossoms," she added, "we'll tell them this is where everything started. Where something broken learned to live again." He didn't speak. But he kissed her then. Slow. Gentle. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask or declare, it just knows. The boy cheered from the window. The baby clapped. The wind picked up and carried the moment off into the trees. And if you ever find yourself wondering if the past has already written your ending, if you believe the world is done with you, remember this. Sometimes a home is built not from lumber or nails, but from mercy. And sometimes love doesn't arrive with thunder. It walks in quiet. It waits. And it stays. Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.